Protected class, I can't make an image of a neurodivergent person.
Oh, where it like was like, oh, we're starting to cross into dangerous territories. I don't want to get in trouble.
I'm glad.
I don't want to be sort of like pinned down for what I don't know or what
I thought it was
Yeah.
good because we need those protections because AI's been doing such negativity.
Yeah, yes, sure. Well, and then there's also just that like what AI is really good at is the commonality. It's not good at the edges.
But that's why it was
Like don't use it for thinking about people at the edges of your experience.
That's why
This is
it was pulling from our culture, which has racism, so that's why it was
Yes.
surviving racism.
I
Those are the people at the edges.
No, of course.
Yeah.
But generally, as you start sort of using them to sort of push. And AI will sort of be like, I don't know. Or I'm unable to sort of get enough information if that's not in my sort of core. Like sort of in the bell curve of like, we do stuff really good with it. We do it at the sort of average level. Moving it towards the edge. This is why human beings involved in this is really important. Okay, we'll give people a couple minutes, and then we'll get started. Everybody, got everyone at least people see here. Welcome back. Yeah, it's gonna be an energy-filled day. We'll stand up and do some stuff, but welcome back. I know you all Thursday involved in working, and now you're here. That's like whatever, mush even more to some extent, but I'm excited to have you all back, and it's exciting to see some of you. But I did some more thinking about who my user was. I plugged it into some systems to sort of digitize it or make it more expand on the ideas. And you like go home, like you put your head on your pillow and you're like, that's you. No, I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about this person that I made up. Yeah, we're class. So today. Yeah, we'll skip a couple more minutes and just jump right into it. If you brought your computers, great. There is some digitization that we could do. A lot of what we're gonna do is still gonna be on physical paper, but some of it's even just documentation, right? Like we did some things. It can live on these pieces of paper, but they can get messy if it's one way crumble. But you take a photograph of it, you dump it into our systems. I have shared a FigJam page. If you've never used FigJam before, it's a whiteboarding sort of opportunity, but ultimately these are some of the exercises that we did yesterday. We'll do some more stuff today. There is an opportunity to digitize some of the stuff that we did today, but we'll mostly focus on pieces of paper because it's there, but we can double it now, take some photos, dump it into this and stuff. Never used FigJam. It's relatively easy. It is open for now, and then I have to share it with as I need. That makes sense? Okay, let's get going. So today we're in part 2, and today we're going to talk a little. We're going to extend our design thinking skills by practicing more of the sort of what I like to call the fun, messy part, which is the making part. So like ideating, prototyping, and testing. We likely will not get to prototyping something in 3 hours or testing it in 3 hours, but I will sort of talk about them generally. We'll sort of think about what are the things that we could build. So today will be a little bit more in the sort of heavy in the ideation phase, but that's what I like to call the fun part anyways. And if I could just run ideation workshops with people for the rest of my life, I would probably do so, but I don't. Some of us don't get that luxury. But hopefully you're here. We'll do some fun things. We're going to do some drawing. We're going to use some Post-its. This is going to feel a little bit more design thinking-esque, right? Lots of Post-it notes, lots of stuff on the wall. And that'll be an opportunity to do that. And hopefully you sort of have done a little bit more thinking about who your user is. If you flushed it out a little bit more, great. If not, we're going to just quickly review it just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then we're just going to dive into what we see. Any questions before we get started? No? Great. All right, let's get going. So again, we're going to recap a little bit about our problem space and our ICF proto personas, and then we'll get into talking about why design thinking generally in the realm of making is really important for storytelling. Obviously, we have something to start with, and then we're going to extend that as we go. And today we're going to talk a little bit about just design thinking as a recap. We'll do a little bit about design thinking storytelling. We'll get into ideation and some ideation activities, and then we'll do some quick testing. Now, as a reminder, we spent last workshop on the first diamond, right? The problem statement, understanding our user a little bit, defining and getting a little bit more specific about our needs. Some of you maybe flushed out a little bit more of the needs as you go. This is quite important. And we don't have a ton of research because we haven't been out researching, but ideally research sort of culminates into a lot of this definition phase and creates a level of insight that you can then explore ideas on. And we will spend today sort of in this second diamond, which is the Ideate prototype and test version of the design thinking cycle, and we'll get to practice some of the things associated with this outputs. If we were looking at a sort of like what are the things that's challenging about the design thinking cycle, is that it sort of makes all those phases look relatively equal, and even like the diamonds are equal, and they are not in any ways. Like there's depending on what you're working on, the problems you're trying to solve, they all have very different time cycles. However, conceptually, this idea of like moving problems through a making phase and building that so you can speed up producing stuff, right? Producing the things that you want to solve the problems that have been identified. And that hopefully is logical. And again, like it's not this like simple logical output. It's kind of messy. Today may feel a little messy because ideation is not this like clean, easy to sort of strategize. Like it will take some drawing and some pencil things. Thinking ultimately is kind of messy, and that's an opportunity to do that. But ultimately, what is sort of valuable is that we come to thinking about problems, outputs. We have and that may help us have ideas, and those ideas are ultimately something that we can make. Hopefully, right? The idea is like, oh, I want to solve the problem with this thing. I thought about it. We identified the problem. We know we can make X or we can make Y or whatever that is, and that results in this sort of object that we want to prototype. We want to figure out how to put it in the hands of our end users so we can test it and get feedback on it. So the entire portion of the second half of the diamond is ultimately a feedback. You're trying to pressurize some of your ideas, put them in the world so you can validate or understand if they work or not. And if you do that fast, you can say, like, that was a terrible idea, but at least we knew it wasn't going to work. And we did it in a 3-hour session versus 3 months or 3 years or 30 years. Some of that do that. Now, the opportunity obviously here is to relate that. So we've all started on our proto personas. Let's just review them quickly. So you have all your teams on the same page. Or having fun. We did this last session. Just remind yourself of Betty or of Shirley. Yeah. Just familiarize yourself with your code that's over there. We have Rachel here. You can pull out if you digitize some stuff, that's fine. Just get your teams on the same page. There's an opportunity, obviously, to just remind yourself of that. Now, one of the things that we're going to sort of consider is just remind yourself of some of the needs that your end user has, right? Because the needs are, like we were talking about before, the needs are the core of your sort of thinking in space. What are they going to be doing? Yeah. There's computer stuff, there's some physical outputs, their role here. Good. If you have some of the stuff that you related, some of you may have used artificial intelligence to help extend your user, all within the realm of possibility, all speed stuff. Good. We'll do this. We'll do it only 10 minutes. But just generally understand Betty is doing.
I also added the right.
Read back over your profile a little bit, so you know who she is, right? Good. Great. Yeah. That's where you're sick.
I like the bond that says transportation. So they created all of that. They also put a new team member learning and training, but it didn't say somebody.
Good.
Training environment. Oh, right. Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Everybody feel back up to speed with your end user? Yeah? Okay. It wasn't that long ago. Sometimes one of the challenges generally with proto personas or user personas generally is that we work on them hard and then they get stuffed in a desk drawer and nobody looks at them. where you're like, oh yeah, I kind of forget who my user was. Just share it, just use it, like addendum it to more things, so there's sort of a continuity of who you're considering, what you're sort of relying on. And ultimately these objects, they as a pencil drawing or as a sort of piece of paper, like not as shareable, but as you digitize them, they can get attached to more things, they can be part of the story or narrative that we want to be able to extend. That's the value in doing them in the first place. It's not just that you as an individual own who your end user is, but you can evangelize that or share it out into the world, which is ultimately the bigger value of some of that.
Screen visual, electro.
Yeah, so Visual Electric unfortunately has gone away. So the AI world is one of those things that's like what do you choose? At some level, they're not all gonna win, and I like using Visual Electric, but then you got purchased by Anthropic and they killed it.
So how about recraft, because I see.
Was it oh yeah, recraft.ai, there's a number of these. Some of the I like to play with AI tools that are lean more towards what designers and creatives are trying to produce. So they lean towards the visual outputs. You can sketch, you can draw, and it helps you render that world in the space, because that's ultimately we visualize the things that are written on a page. So those are quite fun to play with. But ultimately, these pieces, your end user, what the problems that they're dealing with, what have you sort of identified, some things that are sort of worthy of carrying forward, what can be communicated, is ultimately related to design storytelling. And design thinking as a framework is a sort of opportunity to align the steps and tell the story. What we do, what is meaningful to solving the problem. As designers, we must always sort of be better at communicating the stuff that we work on and what value it has, and why we should extend that not only just in our own work, but deeper into the process to an organizational level, get teams on it to DP outputs, and generally drive human-centered ideas into the encapsulated of acting on the designing process, right? And the role there that is quite useful is that storytelling is visual. It helps us communicate not only just that we have done the thinking, but we can also sort of frame it in the world. We can visualize it in time and space. We can make it more memorable. There's all the studies about how a story is 22 times more memorable than just a plain fact. This is why I mean the education space has existed in this world. Like tell a good story, and your audience won't just be like, "Oh, why is the moon 10,000 whatever 100,000 miles away or whatever." Tell a story about why you're going to places and what you're doing. Right. We want to communicate empathy. It's what we do. We have an opportunity at which to practice that empathy through artifacts, but also build on the characters and the challenges of real people in real action. Like that means we got to tell another story about Betsy or about Rebecca or Rachel or whoever person that we sort of invented, or if we can sort of even infuse actual customers, actual end users as our sort of thinking tentpoles, that allows us to then imbue that into the outputs. And ultimately, it's more engaging, right? It's like, we're not just talking generally about people, we're talking about Rachel is a little bit easier to sort of conceptualize, have feelings for, and then ultimately tell a story about in the long run. That makes sense. Now, the role of why we do this, are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
Yes.
I equate a lot of his talks to like the power of a simple graphic. And like it's like he's just talking about like 3 circles with like pointing at a line. It's like that's the one. And like, come on, man. Like really? But ultimately, it's sort of an interesting thing is that people don't really want to know the what, they want to know the why, right? And so understanding the background of your end user, why are you solving the problem the way you're solving, is the story that you communicate. Why is this important? Why does the business care? Why does the user need it? What the why? And again, designers ultimately are quite good at asking why. There's even sort of frameworks that we use. There's a lot of areas of. Did you watch the cartoon Animaniacs?
Yes.
Remember Mindy?
Yes.
Animaniacs? She always asked one. Like I quit myself. Like I would of a generation that so watch that cartoon. I feel like a why. I'm just Mindy in the corner asking what I want. And anytime I go to places, I'm like, don't be alarmed by my whys. I'm going to ask a lot of them. The whys are the most important aspect of what you can do. And sometimes asking why is what design brings to the table to some extent. And if we can align that why into a storytelling, that then sort of translates into more outputs. Now, the why is sort of this core of what you're trying to equate in your end user, right? What is their behavior? What is the decisions that go into that? And how does that translate out to solutions that impact how they feel, what they're doing, what their engagement level is, why they are apprehensive in the first place, et cetera, right? There might be lots of reasons to sort of translate that, but the role of storytelling helps us sort of dig into the bigger relationships to that, and then extend how our solutions are all in individual pieces sort of move through the process. Is that clear? Now, there's this like any good design thinking from quote Steve Jobs, you're like, give the German style. Now, Steve Jobs, I sort of, although if you read his book, he wasn't a very easy man to work for necessarily. Someone call him an asshole. But the role of this is that the most powerful world in the world is storytellers with a vision, the values, and the agenda. Obviously, a CEO who runs a big company wants to sort of that's a very ego-driven statement to some extent. You sort of understand how we align. But there actually is this relationship of design. If it doesn't align with the story, it's very hard to communicate itself. So what Apple did very differently than the rest of the consumer electronics is they stopped talking about it's like tech. Like they no longer talk about like how fast the engine was or whatever. You don't know. It doesn't matter. It's like you're buying the machine because it helps you do something, right? That you don't need to know how many gigahertz or anything that process. So it's not actually that relevant for how Apple engages in your life for this whole thing. That's a hard thing to do, but it ultimately translates into very different moves, and obviously they've been quite successful at doing that. Now, if we look at the sort of 5 areas in which to tell a story, there's generally a lot of ways to do this, but if we start with listening, right? Listen to your users, explore what they have to say. Ideas are not in an echo chamber. We have to listen out in the world to understand what's happening, and that's where some ideas can get born from. We start with our end users, we listen to them, they likely will tell us what they need. But sometimes what they say and what they actually mean are 2 different things, right? Well, what do you don't like about the output? There's a leading question in the first place, so you never ask your user what they don't like. So they tell you things that they actually don't, that they do like, that they don't. But the role of listening to them is an important aspect, but it's actually hearing them. I see what you're doing, I hear what you're saying, but I understand that underlying need is maybe different. You may be frustrated with this outcome of a single form or a bill or whatever that is, but the larger relationship will be tied to much deeper stuff. Right. So the listening piece is quite useful. Generation, this is a product of generating lots of ideas. We will get into generating ideas today. It starts with thinking about problems deeply, relating them to an outputs, and that can be about framing the context in which those problems or those outputs exist. We will work on some other things that helps us frame the logic or the strategy or the scenarios which that exist, and the goals and context in which the user wants to be in the right place at the right time. We have a person, we may want to, because they are an actor in our world that we're inventing, in a space that's there, that allows us to translate that. Ultimately, that helps us tell a story. Who, what, where, when, why. Like, we can start with, well, why are they there? Who are they with? What are they doing? How does that impact their outcomes? And what does that mean for solving the problems that you're trying to solve? And then ultimately, if that is all sort of aligned and put into a process, we can then build scenarios or products or services, flows, apps, whatever it is. But there's lots of things you can sort of say, I'm going to intervene in that problem with X solution through a prototype. So making something tangible, building it out in a certain way. And we'll practice some of that today. Any questions here? Now, what makes storytelling in design quite useful is that it requires a lot of conceptual skills. Some of you may have some of these. Many of us don't possess all the conceptual skills that we sort of wanted and needed. I sort of say, oh, maybe you love drawing. Maybe you like to write on your think writing is a skill. If you write a lot in your day, if you write for yourself, writing is thinking. So there's a lot of this that goes in there. But conceptual skills of drawing, writing, reading, storytelling, empathy, speaking, logic of relationships, EQ is emotional quotient, time management, planning. strategy, like all these things sort of go into the larger relationship of how do we translate that stuff in the story for what we're doing in strategic thinking or decision making or vision and leadership, problem solving, change management, and innovation. Now, there's more obviously that can be sort of applicable as conceptual skills, but we will lean on conceptual skills quite meaningfully as it comes to ideating, because that is how we sort of communicate the problems and tell what's there. Now, design thinking as a process helps us ideate because it takes the first diamond of who our user is and what defined problem have we understood, and allows us to sort of find this crux moment to say, well, how are we going to go solve that? Ideating is the sort of generative opportunity to sort of think about what you're going to make. And generally, there are about 4 zones at which ideas can be sort of produced. Does that make sense? So you can have ideas in the illustrative relationship. It's illustrating a problem, or it's illustrating the communication of that idea. It's sort of helping articulate a certain aspect. It could be visualizing data, right? The data visualization, we just need to uncover and show that this is a problem through data. It can also be an idea, just purely idea generation. User did A, B, and C, and D, and we think they can do it in A, B, and C, or they skipped over a gap, or their mental model was wrong, or whatever. Lots of that in the idea generation. And then also in the just visual discovery. We think there is an opportunity space here, which we don't know yet, or that the user is sort of unable to articulate what the problem is, and we help them visualize it. It's sort of like, oh yeah, it's just like, I really hate the color red on all of the forms. It makes them nervous and gives them anxiety. Like, oh, okay, problem. Could you remove red? Yeah. Is red a useful color for communicating error or importance or relevance? Sure, right? So there's other things that sort of go into that. Now, the role of this is sort of thinking, well, how do I sort of apply where my ideas sort of come from? We will spend some time in the concept-driven idea generation today, because that's where a good place to start. Right? We have a concept and we're exploring a bunch of stuff, right? We have a user that has some problems and we need to expand on that opportunity. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the role of ideation in design, and these are drawings from the incomparable Bill Buxton. Have you ever heard of Bill Buxton before? I love Bill Buxton. No. So Bill Buxton, well-known product designer. He works at Microsoft, and he has written a really great book called Sketching User Experience Design. But ultimately, like lots of the things that he's implemented is like just translated into the new sort of the new Microsoft. Microsoft of the old days is no longer. They are sort of now competing at some of the same level of Apple and some other pieces because of some of the things that he's implemented at that place. But in this book, he sort of talks about this idea of like, well, what is the role of ideating? Is it about generation? If it's generation, that looks more like this. It's a branching idea. I start with a premise, and I come up with multiple possible solutions. As many sort of ideas that are in a different set of arrays that align to the problem space or the idea, right? And design and ideation allows us to sort of branch out and think about a lot of different strategies. And that allows us to sort of say, well, how robust and how much land have we covered in our ideation, which is a fun part. And then once we choose an idea, then we can prototype it. And prototyping then says we're choosing this concept and we're going to now iterate it and we're going to refine the solution from here or wherever the branch has been chosen. Does that make sense? Now, the role of prototyping is an opportunity to increment and refine the opportunities, but you can have lots of different prototypes going at once, and which is the value generally of design thinking on teams, is that you're not just running one idea to one prototype. You have lots of things that you could run, and the faster you can ideate and prototype concepts, that allows more horses in the race. Also can say this one has the most value, so we can stick with it, or we can put more resources in it. Hopefully that makes sense. Similarly, there's a premise in the concept. I think I showed this last week, but Paul Lasso's design funnel, and this is again, I showed the power of a simple graphic. Design goes out as a starting point, and you elaborate on things, you understand your problem, and goes up. And then eventually it needs to turn the corner and go back down. And the role of a starting point is that you have elaboration. You don't know what your problem is really yet, right? We can maybe assume some things, we can put some stuff down on paper, we can think that our problem is there, but we really only can evaluate whether that's a real problem by sort of doing some experiments, right, or testing it. If we say we think this is a problem, let's go validate if that's a problem. One of the best ways to validate if a problem really exists is you build a prototype and put it in front of your end user who thinks that is a problem. So like, yeah, no, you saw, oh yeah, that thing that I was so frustrated with, I'm no longer frustrated with, or whatever, right? There's a hypothesis that has been proven, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the design process ultimately allows us to start with our end users and our scenarios of which we sort of understand what there is. We build prototypes to sort of rely on that outputs, and then we ship product back to them that we know solves the problem. Yeah, it seems so easy, right? Like, yeah, just go make it. You're going to be successful. But the world is really quite much more complex than that to some extent. But the role of sort of thinking about the flow is where are you along the process? Am I going out? Am I using prototypes to expand my opportunities? Am I using it to sort of ship or refine the outputs? Knowing what the prototype's role is quite useful. We will spend time in the early stage of like drawing and thinking about problems. It's not going to get to the refined phase at which you're even able maybe even to test these things with a larger group. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll sort of ask it. Who here likes to think visually? Draw, sketch. 1, 2. Yeah. A little bit.
Everything. Okay.
Multi-sensory. Multi-sensory. Yeah, if you feel like you gotta act it out, you gotta like do a leg kick, you gotta get kinetic with your learning, that's fine. I'm not gonna teach you doing that. There's lots of ways to do that. I come from a background of drawing. I've drawn since I was a kid. This is a game that I like to play with my kids called Exquisite Corpse. Does anyone know that the game Exquisite Corpse? Oh, it's great. You take a piece of paper, you fold it into thirds, the one person draws the top. It could be a body, it could be whatever that is. Then you hand it to the next person. They can't see the drawing, but they get to draw the middle. The second person draws the feet, whatever the feet is. And then you unfold the page and you have this sort of mangled collaborative drawing. It's been done by artists. One of my favorite exhibitions was an artist, you know, Frida Kahlo, the artist Frida Kahlo. So she used to do these in bars in Paris with her friends. And they have ones of like her husband and like all this weird stuff. And just the fact that these like ephemeral artifacts exist, that somebody saved this like crappy drawing in the 1910 or whenever they were like sitting in a bar in Paris is like, one is sort of amazing, but also the concept of collaborative drawing. I have done this at like birthday parties and stuff, so that is what it is. Now, the role of this, which I sort of find fascinating, is drawing. I am a big fan of it, obviously, because I can do it, but I also think it's thinking and it speeds us up. But drawing is faster than talking. Drawing leaves less room for lies. This is Le Corbusier, the famous architect, who is also famous for giving lectures and he would draw on the wall and drawing outputs that was there. Obviously, artists and designers spend time in the visual, right? We have to make stuff, we have to make things visual, create design in the world, which requires some skill in making, right? Which is somewhat related to drawing. Now, we'll spend some time drawing because drawing is thinking. It takes some practice. Most of us in the speed will start at this level. Boxes, faces, stick figures, do not feel like you have to render the world in a realistic way. One, we don't have time for it, and many of you may not have the experience of it. Most of us think drawing is on this end. No, drawing is for it. We're sketching things. We're just gonna make stuff that helps us talk about an idea, make it visual, sort of own it as outputs. And the role of action is we want to start with generating lots of things, and that's where don't focus on the quality, focus on the quantity. That'll be what we do today. And again, this requires your conceptual skills. It's not just a drawing, it's a drawing, a story, it's a label, it's a description, it's a little bit of what the problem is being solved. Use both language. You can describe it to your team, but if it's on a sticky note, a written word that's clear to read, and a little drawing will go a long way. Does that make sense? So let's talk about ideation. Ideation is a structured and creative process of generating, developing, communication of new ideas to solve problems that unlock opportunities, and it blends divergent thinking, generating many of the things. And it can associate some convergent, like we go out, and then we go back in, and then we go back out, and go back in. It's sort of this like, it's an interesting dance, right? You're not only just generating a lot, but you go out for a small amount of time, and you come in through voting. Yeah, no, those ideas are way too crazy. I'm gonna put them over here. These ones seem doable. They can be combined, and it's actually quite collaborative. It's an opportunity to do this as a team, which we will practice today. Ideation is ultimately a sketch, and it's not a final solution. Sketching is a key step to sort of finding the right solution, and it helps us eliminate options. We can sort of explore lots of different things in a concept, whether it's amplifiers for a smartphone or a design process, and it can embrace the messy, right? Like, is it reasonable that it is a huge like microphone, or that it is, the things that cheerleaders use, or whatever that is? That makes sense. But ultimately, it helps us sort of use our brain and stretch it to do lots of the things that equate to that category or that idea space. Ultimately, sketching is fast and cheap. A piece of paper costs us nothing. Pen works way faster than a computer. I'm still I'm sort of excited about the AI space, but I think it can't think as fast as me, and it can't draw as fast as me. And the minute that it can, it'll be like, this is gonna be crazy. So I could just like draw, and the thing will make. Draw, and we may get that place at some point. But the role of this is what's quite useful is there's just as much exploring, just as much detail or fidelity that can be done in a drawing that can then help you skip steps or move faster in the process. I particularly like drawing almost as a replacement for wireframing if you are detailed enough to do that. Some places need to go through the longer process cycle, but that can be helpful. Now, ultimately, there's sort of 3 stages of ideation. One is generative relationship, generation of ideas. There's lots and lots of methods. We'll go over a couple of these today. We're going to do a best idea, best use, and we'll also do a 2x2 matrix output. But other methods that are worth practicing are things like Scamper. Have you ever done a Scamper exercise? Or no? It's an acronym that sort of requires you to sort of think through its scenario, its category, its action, et cetera, et cetera. There's mind mapping, crazy eights. What if I like I wish? 6 hats thinking. Again, these are all different sort of strategies. Practicing lots of different idea generation opportunities is a way to sort of things that you know you can do well, things that sort of are stretch your brain, sort of make you do them in different ways. And ultimately, they're all trying to do it different. They're just trying to pull out ideation out of an end user or a group of people or a team. Does that make sense? So the second part is selection. Selection can be related to the sort of like, I have some ideas, I need to organize them, I need to relay them in a certain way. That could be things like 2x2 matrix, just like feasibility versus originality. There's lots of ways to do 2x2 matrices. Technology or viability versus effort, right? So like how things that are hard, things that take a lot of teams, how much knowledgeable, whatever. But you can sort of map them into these spaces, and that allows you to sort of prioritize them and say, oh, these are great ideas, but these are the only ones that we really want to focus on. We'll use voting today as our sort of prioritization process. Voting is a good one because it helps teams just sort of say like, of us, we sort of all recognize that one was really bad, that was really good opportunity there. There's many ways to do selection, and ultimately the selection allows us to then iterate or build that into a plan. We think these 3 ideas are worth producing. This one should start. We're going to prototype it with these 3 aspects. We're going to give X amount of time to the development of that prototype, and then we'll review it back. And we'll have 3 U team who's done in lots of places that do design thinking, but also in lots of product teams, lots of companies put small teams together that all work on similar stuff, relative. And then you're like, oh, which one actually won out? Which one can prove that is worth taking to the larger team, et cetera, et cetera. At places like Google, this is where you get like there's skunks. You ever use LADWP, you have a skunks work team? We're going to take special people, put them in a room, and they're going to be skunks work. They're going to make a product.
We don't make a lot of the products. We
Well,
deliver electricity.
You deliver electricity through a product. That's at some level, right? It's like, yeah, I get it.
The power pole.
Yeah, the power pole, the servicing line. I mean, there's lots of service involved, but it has to interface with the product somewhere, right? It's like it's no longer just like an organization of people. Like it has an interface that has a place to solve that, etc. One of the important rules. So these are the rules. I did not make these up. These are from IDEO, which I talked last week. But during ideation, there's some important things. We want to. It's an open space to do this. There's no wrong answers. It's just about creation. So the most important thing is to defer judgment. Just put the idea down. It doesn't matter what it is. There's no one here that's going to tell you what's wrong. Sometimes you just need to get it off your brain and it needs to be out there. Don't, if I see you crumpling up Post-it notes, I will open them back up. Don't worry about your drawings, don't do that. We want to encourage wild ideas because sometimes the wild ideas are the space that we sort of has kernels of what you could do. We'll work on some of that stuff at the beginning. You can build on the ideas of others, so don't hoard your stuff. Oh, these are fine. Don't look. It's like, oh, that's cool. Oh, I have an idea that's similar to that. This is sort of can create natural patterns and opportunities. You want to stay focused, so we're gonna rely on our end user. We're gonna rely on the problem space that we've sort of all identified, and that's gonna be our focus space. It can get kind of loud and busy, but try and like have one conversation at a time. This can be a little bit more challenging when it comes to busy rooms, but we'll sort of get to it. Obviously, be visual. I'd encourage drawing, writing, make a little thing. Use bold markers on your post-it notes so we can sort of see them. Those little pencils and outputs. And the role of this is ultimately to get as many ideas out on the page as we can. So we'll go for volume. Does that make sense? Any questions here? I'm gonna go back. This is a safe place to come up with some ideas. Don't judge it. If you have I'm always so self-negative towards my ideas, just like try and throw that person to the back of your brain. Work it out, right? Don't think about it too hard, write the idea down, move on. Is that clear? Okay. So we're gonna do this we're gonna start with an idea known as the bad ideas. Any of you familiar with Sturgeon's law? Okay, there is this Thurman Sturgeon was a science fiction writer. He sort of famously said that like 90% of everything is crap. So you might as well like get it all out and focus and find a way to focus on the 10% that's really good. If you don't know what 10% is good unless you do a lot. So he was sort of talking about his domain of science fiction. So there's a lot that's written, a lot of it's not very good. But if you find the 10% that is good, follow people that know the 10%. The 10% is where culture gets driven, et cetera, et cetera. This is more relevant. But ultimately, sometimes what's blocking good ideas is a bunch of bad stuff. So you have to get the bad ideas out first, or you have to start with these things that don't work that way. And like a hose that has a blockage, your good ideas won't ever get to unless you sort of articulate or put that stuff down. Because we're in a safe space and there's no judgment, we can say like, oh, it's the worst idea ever. Then we can articulate. Does that make sense? So we're going to start with that today. It's going to be our first exercise. The way this sort of works is we're going to generate some bad ideas. 1 to 3, write them down, as many as you can think. Just think of like, what is the worst way to solve that's Miller's problem? Oh, the worst way should just kill wait for her to die. Like that'll solve the problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to each individually, you're going to get out some post-it notes, the individual colors, use some fat markers. If you don't have any, I have a bunch of Sharpie, you need them. And it'll be Sharpie. I think you got Sharpie. And what we're going to do is we're going to just think about your end user, Rachel, or whoever it is, and the problem that you're trying to solve for them, and what would be the worst idea for solving their problem. We're just going to get some bad ideas out of our head. We're going to do this for about 15 minutes. Individually, each of you write down 1 to 3 to 5, 1 to 3, whatever. Just a few bad ideas. Bad ideas to solve for your end user and the problem that you guys came up with last week. There's some actual with it, but I remember.
It's all like
Unit 2. Add enormous speed through the processing.
these are our practice. Maybe our applications.
I'm bored. Yeah, draw.
Oh, we need pictures.
if you want to, I would encourage you with your
Oh, I got, oh, no.
just doing nothing. Do nothing.
Oh, later in our stay. Expect high productivity after short training period.
Good. We're not gonna do this for very long. I'll make it free.
Don't measure.
Just turn it off. Just turn off the power.
I heard something.
Stop. Just stop. Where do you go? Just stop. Don't do it anymore. Yeah.
Oh, so you want me to
Stop.
update this one? Because I had a thought.
Want us to go cut down her mailbox? Just take her mailbox out of the ground.
Oh, no, worry.
Tell her not to worry about it. Yeah. Well, just ignore the problem. Just. I think it doesn't exist. No way. Let's do it. Just stop. Just smoke more. Just force them all to move. Force Archie to teach.
Steal the best boxes, identity.
Yeah, no, that's not a good idea. That's not a great one. Okay, we'll do this for another 2 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. All right, here are my 4 ideas.
Give her free internet.
Where do I put?
Oh, you know what's better?
On the board.
Moving them to another.
Draw the internet. How do you draw the internet? You did it. Yeah, see, it's a goal. The lines, right?
Right, actually, like the individual.
They're just moving
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Oh, lines? It's a series of 2? Al Gore said that? You never thought you would just produce bad ideas? Oh, you never thought you would run out of bad ideas? Oh, there you go, that's a good sign.
How about the large?
You exhausted your bad ideas?
I love it.
Okay.
Oh, Rachel.
Good? Okay, 1 more minute of bad ideas. We have just a few that you have up there.
Yeah.
This is your good idea? Oh, everybody have on? Get the vote first. Get the vote for a terrible idea. Also. Yeah, if you have bad ideas, everybody's giving us some bad ideas. Look at your bad ideas, get the dots, and we're gonna vote for a really bad idea. This is the worst of the worst on our list. What is the worst idea out there?
Well, how do we?
What is the worst? Vote for the ones that are pretty bad.
I think that can be.
That's what
She had. Like you can get it.
How do you rate the severity of a terrible? Well, that should be personal.
Oh, that's morality.
It could be morality wise. You have 3 votes. You're allowed to look at them and you're allowed to say, I think this one is really bad.
Not.
If they are similar, you can combine them.
But it's like.
It's fine. It's fine.
Something like this could happen. Heads and heads.
Oh, Paris companion?
Like, this is terrible. This would not be a bad idea. Terrible idea.
I love that you have a parrot command. I actually saw a man walking with a parrot on my drive today. He's got a big green parrot on his shoulder. And I was like, oh, I love it. Love it here. Dude, the parrot was on the street. I was hoping you had like a parrot's leg and an iPad. Yeah, get the dots out. Vote for a bad idea. Okay, pretty bad. Are there some themes? Okay, if there's some themes, great. Like that's a really good thing to sort of relate, right? All of you think that that's collectively as a team a pretty bad idea. Okay? So that can be a reason of like, oh, well, we all agree that a free service is a pretty bad idea. Right? Or whatever. We're great in job.
So you have.
Now the question is that a job that anyone wants to do?
What
What does it pay?
And then you guys get to.
Okay. Voting, good. Get them on there.
Well, that's what I have. Sorry.
Okay.
Then top daily, like you're not here. Sorry.
So just one more. You get three.
Oh, 3 votes?
Oh,
3 votes.
That's different.
Sorry,
Yeah, I can-
stop being a little pretty.
You get 3 votes.
I like
Vote a little bit.
And it is trying late.
Yeah, I vote for that.
They all get 3 stickers. You can't get. They're all bad. That was pretty bad. No problem. Like a bad idea crumpled up is a really bad. It's like, wait, what is how bad is this? I mean, how is it really that bad? Is it so bad? Is it so bad? Not to worry about it. Okay.
Is there an extradition one? Oh, do that. I was looking for that. I was looking for that.
Double down on the. We'll vote for another 2 minutes when you don't know.
The parent information right now.
Show weakness or.
Everyone expects to vote at the top. Which they.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we don't call it extradition, but we call it.
Okay, you win. A one-way. So now. You guys think that, hey, you have post there. Yeah, you have the birds, that's terrible idea. The one that's actually.
Where's it taking her?
Do that idea.
I just
Okay, to make it good.
Hold on.
Convert that bad idea to a good idea. It's one bubbled up to the top. Individually. So, ignore her, problem, and tell her not to worry about it. Well, I want to know about this. No, I'm really curious.
It's not a bad idea, it is,
It's massive.
I was the software in front of you.
Oh, just to see if I would be right. Is it really that? Norms and threats, learning styles and class. Yeah. Okay. So now, take one of these that's high, with the ignore her problem, and maybe still address it in the style class. How would you convert that terrible idea to? Same category, and that's fine.
So.
There is a thing of one idea per post-it note. Let me just the other thing.
ignoring it was kind of the same. We're not gonna worry about it.
That's why.
There you go.
Yeah, your phone. Write it down. Get you discounts.
Okay.
Because I voted for both.
You're just using
You guys also. Union sanction.
As everyone,
Finding different modalities, maybe even a survey. of how it's like that. Yes, that's it.
Don't you think? It would be our intent to close people.
the handy helper solves the problem. I don't know. That's actually. Good note, the handy helper.
But what if, as an instructor, you include more visuals and more.
I don't know what's going on. I like it. I like it.
Oh, so give a higher.
I didn't put this. I wouldn't translation. Get Jerry Lewis. I don't think Jerry Lewis.
Elderly hour. That's the greatest name ever. Geriatric line. Geriatric line.
He made his back.
Good idea.
No, guy, Billy, there.
Okay. So you can convert any bad idea is convertible into a good. Potentially a good idea.
Bad idea. It's very large, that is.
Okay, good ideas.
I mean,
Vote for them.
also, I guess you're.
If there's anything from your good ideas that is worth pursuing in a good idea. Just one strategy. Your team all about getting big for the bad idea, and then you say, breathing. Taking the drug out of the face. It's a thing. Nicotine free. You're getting medical pleasure with all of that asshole. Vote for your good problem.
But it is an option.
But I would say.
You're converting. So the worst idea, I converted you, something each individual is supposed to convert it to good. Yeah. So that was a terrible idea. You all voted on that. Each individually say, well, how would I convert that to a decent idea? Okay. May result in 4 new decent ideas from the bad idea.
Also, I don't give our.
Uh-huh. I see you leaving. You have a direct line for, yeah, for Jared and college. And good,
Yeah.
great. That's a good idea. Documented as a good idea. Good. Yeah. Right, good at the top is a good idea. One idea for close to note. Would you get an actual robot? Over here, robots. Robots. Good idea.
And the shuttle.
I think all of those.
Right? Oh. I mean, I was determined. Yeah. It's not thinking of it. I've always said. It's like says with the show like. Mobile versus one, I still not get that.
Everybody have a good idea?
Yeah.
Converted from a bad idea? The role of bad ideas in ideation generally is that they're worth having. Don't throw them away. Don't keep them locked in. Sometimes they actually hide or they have a kernel of a good idea. Any bad idea is convertible to a decent idea, because what is actually underlying the bad idea is that it is a problem, right? The bad idea to consume that or push that bad idea forward is that may be the space in which you're trying to navigate. So sort of recognize it's a bad idea, well, what are ways in which to then go about solving that? Does that make sense? Okay. So you're gonna vote about that? Document your top vote. You guys are putting new ideas together. Good. I'm gonna do that. How many of you are sort of surprised how quickly you convert your bad idea to something decent?
That was good. We did it quickly.
You did it quickly. Why?
Because we were actually able to convert it from something that actually exists.
Okay. Yeah, it was outside of the realm of possibility, and you brought it back into the realm of possibility. Great. Okay. There's lots of bad ideas exist in the space that are like, I don't know. It's like there's a hologram. It's terrible. It doesn't exist. It's not a good idea. So like, oh well, what if it actually was in the realm of possibility, or at least felt tangible in some meaningful way? Right. Good. Anybody else have a reason why they thought it was how they found it easier to sort of convert a bad idea? They wonder why.
No, similarly, you got us to thinking in the realm, and there's actually programs that already exist that are, I mean, that way.
Yeah, there's
Like,
there's
it's not that bad.
there's something that's maybe doing okay, right? It's like in the realm. You're like, oh, but if it's like if it would, but like anything, some ideas are well intentioned but are just executed poorly, and that makes them bad, right? But you're like, oh, but if they just weren't executed so poorly, they could have done what they wanted to do. There are things that exist within the realm of possibility that just require a different set of strategies, outputs, or it could be modified in a more meaningful way, it could be branded different, or it could be communicated in a more effective way. And what makes it bad now is that it's just sort of lambasted. I mean, you pay attention to how we could improve it to be this other space. So good, right? There's lots of that sort of, I recognize that it's sort of not okay to do that, and for us to fix it might be doing this different thinking cycle. Does that make sense? Now, the role of this that's sort of helpful is that one, small amount of time, you gotta come up with ideas. Some of them are worth saying, that's just not even worth paying attention. So bad, it's just not even actually worth convertible, or that really bad idea is still able to be brought to a realm of possibility, made into that it's not a parrot on your shoulder, but turned into a robot that holds your hand, or whatever, right? And the opportunity there is sort of fascinating, is that as people coming up with solutions, we want things to be helpful. And you don't actually, sometimes you can't articulate what makes it good, but we all can sort of articulate what makes it really bad, right? Like, this is a sort of, the naysayer sort of preface. It's like, we can all sit around and go, God, that's shit. And I know it's shit, I can tell everyone it's shit. But what makes it really good is always harder. Like, well, what makes a really good movie? Like, oh, yeah, enough to tell you. But I can tell you what makes it really bad. Right? And you're like, oh, what makes it bad? Like, oh, the characters sucked, and there's no storyline, and the
Predictable.
yeah, it was predictable, and it's just I left feeling like I was worked like I wasted my time. So now the opportunity for us there generally is as people who want to come up with ideas, who want to be sort of useful in the ideation phase, is that we also want to show people how we can take ideas that are out on the edges or that really maybe think are bad and pull them into a place that is maybe useful or viable. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to move on and we're going to continue to ideate. Now, ideation is really, just like we had started here, it's about volume. You're going to spend a little time on your own making. It's not a competition. Some of us are able to produce more than others in a small amount of time, but ultimately it's about making and feeling like you've gotten the thinking out of your chest. Right, to some extent. And what is really useful about collaborative ideation is that I see you saw over here at this table, like we were talking about an idea, we all talked similarly about a similar thing, and then it resulted in like, oh yeah, that is interesting. Oh yeah, we sort of have that already, but it could be done this way. It amplifies itself. Your idea plus my idea equals something that actually is worth sort of saying, yes, we want to pursue that, or it's interesting, or it can be amplified, and you can make more out of it. And it also gets other people thinking. I wasn't really considering a robot. And now if a robot existed, well, what could it do? Oh, well, it could help that elderly lady collect her bill. Because it can go to her door, collect the bill from her, or what? Now, the opportunity here is sort of broad and outputs, but the role that's sort of fascinating is, and I love this book from Rick Rubin. Didn't you know this book? Heard of this book? Creative Act. Maybe you know who Rick Rubin is?
Yeah.
Who's Rick Rubin? He's a music producer. Yes. Famous for sort of getting the Beastie Boys started, and now he's done stuff for every There's absolutely everything. Paul McCartney.
That's him on the right.
This is it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But his quote is sort of fascinating. This book is just a sort of a series of gems about the creative process, generally working with other creative artists and being an outputs. But ideas don't come out of the blue. They don't merely happen or to come from us. That we're sort of tuned into that. We pay attention, and then we're able to say, "Oh yeah, that's a bad idea," because we don't want to ignore Betsy completely. We can't give her power for free or whatever. There's sort of stuff that's generally around that if we can tune into, we can then funnel into more ideas or more outputs. And the opportunity there is finding ways and strategies to recognize them. Ideation does not happen effectively just in a room. You have to practice it, right? If you practice it more, when you sit down in a room to sort of be pressured to come up with ideas, you can then do it more effectively. It takes some practice. So if you're like, oh, I don't feel like I made that many ideas. It's like, yeah, I put you on the spot and I gave you 5 minutes to come up with some bad ideas. Yeah, they were sort of bad. Should they have been worse? Maybe. Some of you may have left out really bad ideas. You didn't want to share that really bad idea. Now, the opportunity here is ultimately recognizing that you have the capacity to come up with stuff. We all do. And that is actually worth documenting, pulling into the world, and design thinking generally is not just left for those that can ideate, but it is extensible to lots of people who have ideas. We all have them. We all can be able to do that, but freeing that opportunity and extending that to the greater outputs. Again, I'll quote Steve Jobs again. To me, ideas aren't worth anything unless executed. Ideas are cheap. They aren't worth anything. Your piece of paper that you've written something on doesn't cost anything, and it takes 5 minutes of your life. So don't treat it preciously. The role of these things are only made valuable by choosing them, moving them into markets, making them have value. But as thinkers who want to come up with lots of ideas, we don't need to treat them preciously. It's not for you to own. Many people can have the same ideas. And if you look at the history of invention and all this other stuff, lots of people are having the same ideas at the same time. I think famously is, you know who Marconi is? Who was Marconi?
Guglielmo Marconi,
Yes.
the first radio.
He invented the first radio, you're correct. That exact technology, they couldn't talk to each other across the planet. It was fundamentally being experimented in the exact same way here by Tesla and other people. He just happened to get his product to market first, but fundamentally understood the same things without talking to each other. This is sort of this idea that like you're not unique, ideas are not precious. You can have one. It's really how you execute the idea that is ultimately meaningful. Design thinking also helps us in the realm of taking ideas and putting them into the world. So, now for us, let's sort of practice it. So we're gonna do this. Get out a fresh sheet of paper. You can sort of tear off a new one and draw it into 4 quadrants. Oh, you can do that. It's not precious. It doesn't need to stay. So draw in a rectangle in 4 quadrants. In the left, you're going to write worked or is working. In the right panel, you're gonna say needs to change. The below that is new ideas. And to the right is other questions you have about the idea space or what could be solved. Does this make sense? Work, change, new ideas below.
This is work, right?
New ideas. New ideas.
You want us to look at ideas section?
But I want you to, we're gonna work in clockwise. So if for your problem space, what is working or has worked in the past? All individually write down some things that have worked for the same client, same user, same problem. So these are just documenting what has worked in the past. One idea per post-it. We're gonna spend 5 minutes talking about what it's worked with elderly people in their buildings. What has worked in the past. Traditionally, what has worked with finding out here. Yeah, write down all the things that you think have worked in the past for your outputs.
But I mean,
The Braille work, our text has worked, yeah, training, videos, peer-to-peer. Hiring multiple people have similar efforts together, coordinated. Each of you individually write down what you think is worked. One post-it per idea. We'll do this for class program.
How do we put it like in the research and do that? Understand. Well, kind of like what originates in.
Yeah. What are things that are?
Well, this was the one I thought.
What, yeah, what is,
you're right.
Yeah.
it can be both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is working is incentivizing.
Yeah.
But if it is something that works for the business, just write business. If it's something that works for the user, write document what you actually understand.
I just read.
Therapy is good.
Next, we just read the manual. What is going on? Alert. And then he would pop in and give us like a little game.
Okay, this is recording.
Yeah. There's such a busy schedule, it just suits.
One idea.
Have that.
That's the customer facing portion.
Yeah.
But then
But I'm saying it is.
15, I know that's very hard. The teen, I know that we were schooling virtually with the pandemic was very hard.
All the web browsers.
Real hard on
I would rather.
Just general, yeah. You have an idea, you vote about here, that might be a good idea, right? It could be translated into your. But here we're just trying to sort of flush out what are the things that actually is successful in your realm of possibility.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about, well, what are things that could change?
So I want to say that we just get rid of the.
By helping you get new ideas.
Sometimes it has some content.
Don't
Yeah.
walk in.
That one thing.
I don't really know what word.
Someone else thinks. I'm guessing. That's the.
Does that make sense?
That's the back of the house.
Okay,
And I was
if you're starting to be like
and then once I got
exhausted,
cozy
so what's
with
worked,
I'm like, oh, I-
talk about what are
Yeah,
some
just
slight
never
things that
felt
could change.
I'm out of
Make
it.
the progress.
Like, we're looking.
Yeah, okay, great.
Oh, did we just move it?
You're right on the same page, or just like, what are things that you think could change slightly, that could improve?
Is this still our total specific?
Correct. What about the, everything within that same.
Huh? Okay.
That's the point.
Okay, what could change, the incentive could change, what could change? The community. Yeah, good. Good. Thank you. Yeah. Of course.
Support was.
Okay.
Used to change
Take care.
This is based on.
Is to recognize Christmas.
Ideas for change or changes that.
Simple.
That needs to change. Things that could change, that help. So this is some of the
That
things.
is subjective.
Yeah, it's all there, like, so there could be things that work, right? It works and they offer different training meetings.
Or you're shouting at them. Sorry, but it's really.
Right, you could sort of say that, like, you take that idea of offer.
And very
What?
Proactive elimination.
Not a different solution.
It could be a different solution, but you could also take the existing things that have worked and modify them to change. One of the examples here was offer an incentive. What could change is price. Does that make sense? So what works is that we offer them something. What change is modify. Does that make sense? Now, what exists in the work aligns to what can be changed. Does that make sense? So if therapy is working, what can change in therapy? To make it more effective. So maybe it could be additional therapy. Maybe it could be a more psychological treatment plan. Or it could be plus therapy, plus a medication. Does that make sense? Because like always going So what changes? Managing behavior.
What you're saying.
So there's something in the what's works already. What?
Be careful, like how I
Customize the voice.
And he was
You can't eat.
Don't miss Bill.
No, that.
Trainer.
Yeah.
Or specialty.
Specialty
They know very well that topic.
Good.
No.
So you want writing,
And then it's.
which is fine, but think about crime. Move.
But it's a Christian. Like there's additional. It's just.
Okay, we're gonna do this for another 3 minutes. Think about some things. Again, You don't have to just go left or right. You go back to some things that have worked, and then what could change about it, that's also fine. Or then maybe something that you think that could change that hasn't been in the work. Again, it's not just one opportunity.
Yeah.
Good.
We had to go into a battery. But it was still the way, so.
Good.
I remember I was like, you guys set up all the calls, right? And I was, for these like red line, I asked her how.
So you have to let's see in this video.
Like crazy.
All about tank.
We're going like think my dad was like,
I think it's just. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good cards.
Yeah.
Very. I really want it. I just like to push you out. But yeah, large print bills, but it doesn't. Online space. Training in the building. Trainer, in the building. Maybe that's a new idea. Go to Sunday church. Yeah, bring the mountain in the hospital. Like, I mixed religious. Go to where your audience congregates. It's general lesson. General lesson is solving and sailing stuff. They are the new ideas for solving your problem. So if you have one from your converting your bad idea to a good idea. And then they just well, what did we not do? The new idea might be some stuff has worked, some things could change, that work, what is it? Haven't been tried at all, could be useful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then maybe questions. I don't know, is it legal to go to churches? That might be a question. That might be a question. You said go to church. And I'm like, can you go to church? Can you? Is there, yeah. Can we be non-denominational? Is it?
Feel double payment.
Like something that's.
Good. Senior liaison.
Good.
Good. I don't know what that is, but. Is that actually like a band?
Yeah.
Draw a hand. Draw a hand. I thought mobile was a phone, but it's actually a truck.
Yeah.
So draw the truck. Like a mobile library. I understand where your ideas are. I'm just watching a drawing. I want a drawing. Great. Give me a drawing.
What's the root cause of that kind of?
New ideas are things that are not being done and what hurt or what is possibly the change and could be helpful. You already have a new idea from your bad ideas compared to right? Put that one in there. Think about some new ideas. The meta glasses, what's this one? Your robot. There's someone in there, yes. Neuralink. The Neuralink. It's a new idea.
That's a new idea.
There's a support machine. The questions about the support in a large area. The questions might be, is it an elephant or is it cat? Is it cat? How do you know? That's the question. Is it a complete job? Question mark. We need to be biased. Good question. Right now, right, use your phone there, you better go. We stop there, you go? That is a, no, it's work. If you use shock therapy in a new way. Shock therapy actually seems like a bad idea. Good idea. Have a little midget all around.
Write it down.
Excellent. Yes. Or new, it could be new ways of things that happen, like making stuff that work, but there's new executions of that idea.
Give it out on campus.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's like
Or
different classes and.
People that would like
I mean, technically, I think there's maybe not for that.
There's a lot, but we're not being.
No. We're gonna do this new ideas. New conversations, I guess some of the things that are in your. Stay. So moving, reasonable, the move.
The other flip side of that is-
Over.
Yeah.
There's a new idea.
I know. Oh, but you know. The problem. Yeah.
Develop a new hobby.
I just have expensive.
Yeah.
Treating everybody, listen to them. Say, do their evaluation. There's a lot.
That's something like that. You see, supported as a replacement.
It is like.
That makes sense.
Like after a while, I'm like, oh, it's hard. It's so like it. Like they're like regular work, right?
And you're on.
And then they're okay.
That's where.
They don't.
Yeah, we have to downstairs. Adam
I'm not holding that. It does say what?
Can't say good idea.
So what is a way in which you could? Okay, convert that, we think it's gonna be out there. Make it silent, or send. It would work. But the things like, why do you?
Why is this? One time I was saying. I know.
Anybody could
They don't have the same.
And then I thought you said the others.
I have the issue might be that it's a part. Right?
I see how.
That is not actually. Yeah, like visual safe place, and that is. Central to the needs of people. Yeah. What is it, second life? What, second
I don't
life?
know.
Second life, progress.
People's
Like apples.
Two pages. Good. What is it, well, you can't see it, there's like a two painted on that eye right now. What is it?
One time, some kind of.
The idea is to reduce the scale. And make it and how could that be done? How does the trainers, that would be done visually, simplified. Scale. You can talk. Double dot. And then,
Like that, right?
Right now.
That's what it
Oh, but the last thing. Some idea. Measuring machine. Oh, Never be like a night line and go.
Stop.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If you guys have sort of come to a conclusion on that idea, if there's any questions, any trend, any new ideas, get your dots out. Use three dots and vote for an idea, for a new idea.
Those hospitals. And that's what I told you.
Yeah. New idea.
That's where you need.
That's important. Okay, your team's starting to slow down, which is very natural inside of ideation, right? So many ideas. Now your team has vote on some new ideas or ideas that are changed.
Again, what are we gonna have for that?
Each kid can vote.
And, so we're not.
There's a couple other ideas. You can just give me.
Regular.
Vote on our new ideas. Things that need to change.
New ideas, so hold on here.
Vote on the things, new ideas and things that should change.
Just three per person.
Three.
I think I already
You already voted?
Well, I voted and we're like, trying to. I didn't know we do this as we go.
Okay, good. Well, I'm looking for some dots out there, sort of, not just my head, but show some dots.
Oh, and there's dot.
This is over my.
Is that, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's a system technology.
In
the service center, like,
I keep trying to fill.
Mobile base, there's another mobile van idea over there.
They still are, it does seem like we know where, where's our campus.
No, they count this, they stole your guys.
Be a better. Well, program.
Yeah.
They were saying. There it is.
Maybe the city. I mean, that had been something.
You mobile van.
You know what it's like.
We're here to help us seniors, help us meeting. Like that.
You're in my boat. I didn't have it later. The little notification I keep.
Okay, vote on the ideas, new ideas for things that could change. Three votes.
One that I had like have a special. Yeah.
Good.
To help like.
Maybe you feel pretty good about some of your ideas. I'll have fun, so they have to go to the board.
Oh.
What amount of time? Okay. So, everyone document your ideas. Take some photos. Leave some dots. Confirm that's how you feel about it. Stand up. We're gonna take a quick break. And then we'll get into the next piece of this. Obviously, in a short amount of time, with more practice, you can maybe generate more, but ultimately, all of your teams have generated a reasonably good number of ideas. Some overlaps even between teams, which is actually the fun part, like, oh, yeah,
I like
a mobile van.
I like
Ours is technology related.
Ours went this way, it went.
Like, exactly, where it happens. Good? Okay, and then we'll take a 20-minute break. Come back at 12:40. Well, 2:50.
Oh, it already has started, so. South.
You good?
I'll get it, right.
Great. Yeah. Let's get more to think about it. Actually do. Specific engineering.
Right, that's not to do with. Jane or definitely. Maybe hone in on a topic that we are.
Like when we had commercial groups do commercial towns.
I was the commercial cuts because I cannot.
That's from.
No, but we did, we used to do it together and I we became generalists and. Honestly,
Very common.
We're going to Grand Central Market, then they're going to go over there tonight.
So.
You're not. It was just me.
What?
So.
Oh.
He's really shy.
We have a gas station, I see like this.
That's me.
Hello there.
Yeah, so it's just not, it's not in the hills.
He's like the lowland.
I'm not- my neighbor is not.
You've been to the back cave?
Yeah, of course. I live in LA.
Sharp.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, 40,000.
So I was talking to him about.
But you're right.
Oh, like, yeah.
Your laptop.
No, my brother moved there. And her husband, and so they were both like. He's Lebanese and she's. And they got married.
And then you're gonna have like graduation grants.
And honestly, no school shoot, yeah, on the, no school shootings, nothing, you know. It's the work. I was, and then people are on those spots, but now. Saudi has changed a lot in this. And so that I want it's not fine.
I haven't been.
Living on Cassie.
Be the teacher and tap. God. I've become my worst nightmare.
Right?
Practical with unreasonable ways. Okay, so let's get started. Let's keep going. One of the things I want to make a point is that ideation generally kind of hard. But what makes it more valuable is that you want to time box it. So you just say, we're gonna have an ideation session. You're gonna say, oh, afternoon, ideate. Like you'll fail every time. But they'll say like, we're gonna spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes working on this thing. That then says, well, what were we able to generate in 40 minutes? Lots of factors go into helping or hurting your ideation session. Obviously, we're in the late afternoon and we work all day. Our brain capacity is actually a limited resource. You're like, oh, I just can't think about that anymore. So it's not a good idea. So generally, you're sort of working on this stuff. One of the things that can be helpful, after meals is a good time to ideate. Or early at the beginning of the day. Sometimes like when you haven't the role of building time and space for it is when it's the most effective or when you have the time and space to do that. Obviously, you all have jobs. This workshop is a sort of a break in that to some extent, but you still have responsibilities that you're doing. Working with teams, ideating is really effective in shorter bursts. And many of you may even go home and be like, how did I not have that idea when I was in that room?
because I sat and thought about it. And like ultimately, actually, that's the power of our subconscious, it's the power of the way our brains work. This is where you don't want to be too overly hurtful to yourself. Like many of you haven't done very much ideation, but without practice, when you sit down to ideate, you then aren't as prolific, right? And only through practice can you produce more ideas more meaningfully and faster. And when you sit down in ideation rooms and you say like, oh yeah, look, I come up with 25 ideas or whatever that is, it's more helpful. Now, many of us have an idea that we voted for, yes? Something that we feel somewhat confident in?
Yes.
Great. So we're gonna take that idea. There's maybe others on your space. That doesn't make the others not worthy, but we have to sort of call the premise a little easier. And then you say something that we feel somewhat confident, sort of move forward. And we're gonna talk about an idea of how to sort of extend that into some more ideation on that particular idea. Now, this premise is known as a design scenario, or I like to call them UX scenarios. Most people work in experience design. But this is a thought exercise that helps you predict how certain types of users will interact with your idea of a product or service in a given situation in order to complete a given goal. So some of this is just articulating, pulling out that scenario of trainers that work only on specific topics, how to sort of work out that idea or whatever that is, or mobile mobile senior citizen mobile van. Whatever that is. Does that make sense? So now we're going to flush these ideas out a little bit. It helps us define the goals and the motivations of our outputs. It helps us add our user back into the story of these relationships, and helps us humanize some of the outputs, and can also be sort of related to this. Now, UX scenarios are sort of built upon three main components. One is your persona, you already have the user. The other is the goal that they're trying to achieve by using whatever your product, service, or outputs. And the third part is the scenario in which that particular solution, a VR hypnosis AI, a little Black Mirror-y, but it's fine. But the role of that then allows us to sort of flush out how this particular solution might be relevant or useful for our end user. And we can then align a particular set of goals to that outcome. Does that make sense? Okay. Now these, again, are ways to sort of articulate that. The way that they are built out is like this. You start with your user, articulate a little about what your user is doing. They need to go to a training session, and they're sort of anxious and helpless, or whatever it is that you have for your end user. You then skip over to what their goals are. Their goals are to achieve that may be aligned with their needs, the outputs of the training, or whatever it is that's happening, or their end goal is to sort of be feel supported and get hope. And your business goal is to get the hook on. Let's fill it. Does that make sense? And then you go back in to say, well, what is the scenario at which a mobile U van could show up at Betsy's house and help her support this idea? Does that make sense? You're just writing. It's mostly a writing exercise, sometimes a visual exercise. And we can articulate that as we go. We'll build these out in the next exercise. Some of these look like this. Here's an example. So here's Samantha Derby. She's 31. She likes biking around the city, advocating riding and infrastructure, and hosting community gatherings. And she wants to find appropriate biking routes and ability to rotate and share her bike routes with others. Example of a bike riding. Then we sort of set up the scenario. This sort of talk about the relationship, how a scenario is helpful. Time and location. It's warm, sunny day. Samantha's looking for a community host, bike jam around Providence, where she lives. And she loves biking socially. So she can find a way to plan a route she wants to take easily and share it with others. Okay, there's sort of the top level initial outputs. We then stuffed into ChatGPT, because that's easier to sort of articulate some of these things a little faster. And say, Samantha is a passionate bike enthusiast, residing in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, with a deep appreciation for social aspects of cycling. She actively seeks opportunities to connect with fellow riders and explore cities' picturesque landscapes. Samantha values community engagement and believes in the power of shared experience to foster meaningful connections. Okay, so improved in the way in which that scenario is sort of helpful, and then that scenario can be articulatable and visualized. Here's an example of one that has been visualized. It's a drawing of Randall. Randall wants to log his unhappy doctor experience. all these getting this, happy doctors experiences. And they can also then be relatively quickly with the help of artificial intelligence like ChatGPT or Gemini or other generative AI tools, is we can plug things like Samantha as a passionate bike enthusiast, textualize her using a bike riding application for being social around Providence, Rhode Island. Does this make sense? This is digital in the sample that I gave you guys in FigJam. If you want to do just write it out, that works as well. But that's what we're going to do next. We're going to take your idea and we're going to plug it into this UX scenario. Does that make sense? We're going to do this for around 20 minutes. If you want to do it into FigJam, that's fine. But I would recommend just writing it out as a whole, and I'll go back to the samples for writing it. If you're using it on a piece of paper, just follow this structure. User persona has a little section, goals at the end of the scenario. Our idea is right? Oh, that's scenario many ways. It doesn't look you going out information. But the scenario is going to be aligned to the problem that your audience is experiencing, right? You can articulate your end user has pain, rage, smoking, and he's organized is
Sure is. So get out any sheet of paper or jump into the FigJam to do it. As a team, it can be helpful on a piece of paper.
So this is a whole new scenario.
This is a scenario on this.
This is what we were gonna do to support the persona. Now you're saying.
We have an idea to support this, certainly support our
Right.
right? With live trainers, specific. And now we're going to articulate that scenario more specifically through this.
Is the trainer gonna do persona?
No, persona is still
Oh, there you go.
Rachel, and Rachel has goals which she presents in the scenario. Supported with that. Through multiple trainers. Does that make sense?
Those are those last one trainers do it. I'm just wondering. Can you? I know, I thought they were gonna understand it.
So what's helpful about the scenario sets up the context of which is multiple trainers are helpful for Rachel, where she's doing it, process. And it please builds more contextual relationship of where this exists and what specific topics being developed because of it's. Again, it narrows down, you sort of generally talk about training, and then we go over scenario that is Rachel, who is live in the needs to have less generic training outputs, needs to have specialized outputs, have specialized trainers to help her. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I look at those. It's a one sign. Someone's getting a host of fight. A sunny day and she's at.
That's his goals and interfacing with LADWP.
And then Monday.
Pay for bills or effectively on
Writing
time.
a story. It's like she's on Monday. That perception.
Number one, the persona. That's not changing.
No,
Oh, I guess I can do it.
you continue to rely on the same. You know about this, you know about Rachel.
Victoria.
Rachel is still the human we're trying to. Right.
Okay.
The story is still about Rachel. Now, the scenario of her goals is achievable through your new idea. Specific, trainers, open trainable, supportive. A simple prompt, but right, so then what you're articulating in the scenario is how she achieved that goal. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
What do you think about Rachel's Monday, she's arrived on public transportation time for class.
Good sauce. That's just right.
For everybody, have any details you want
Really?
to? Trying to create.
Yeah, it's overstretched by her work, whatever, we can do that. And then jump over to the goals, when it's fairly. Goals.
Yeah, I mean, but then talking about the surrounding areas too, like about hills, we need to expand here. Yeah. So within accessible features of this for the funds. About 20 facilities that we can cover out.
Great. Yep. What are the goals that they're trying to achieve? Here, essentially, we are articulating some of the stuff we've already aligned to. This is brand new, right? We've already aligned some goals of what they're trying to do, and we're trying to infuse that idea of the mobile technology, scenario into this coaster.
More understand that. Yeah. Here, more understandable.
Yeah, we heard some. I think it's re-articulated.
Does anyone remember the word for the idea? We have the most votes on.
It's like Lance Brown's.
It was specialized training. How do you talk?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, my
Great.
goal.
But the scenario
We're taking it.
is.
Right.
Yeah, and the goal, view and pay, extend it, and her idea. So what is the scenario very? Schedules, so we figured the one that each gives the library. That's your scenario.
So next, outreach date at, but city agency is number one, number two with the CBLs.
So,
And then
yeah,
number three.
this is building out the context that was, how does that fit there?
Respond.
Yeah.
Feedback in a way that she's narrating, which is letting the instructor know.
That's, is a frequencer, now you can infuse your rest of your ideas.
And then.
You've got that live. For the mobile payment, and she talked to Drew
Or
Jerry. Schedule around for you better. Oh, Jerry Lewis. Then you go like,
CSC.
you write out a quick little scenario at which Rachel.
They wanted to call it.
achieves the goal.
She wants to call herself, there was no other than not
She
just
wants
call.
to be able to,
Self-regulate.
you could say self-regulate, she wants to be able to ignore what's happened, and she wants to be productive and just kind of. Being fast, this isn't real.
No, so you so this is better solution, so it's directly related to her need, have one-on-one engagement. Small group. Let's use this.
What I said this morning.
During your report, right?
Yeah.
So we can get a lot of popular,
Yeah.
the senior center liaison, and if we will. At least put it. At least.
Can you
Provide a proper leader, and you to fill it out.
Her goal is to understand the material, and that's the way we help them to help with this.
So there is a process, number it, number one, she connects to the outputs, number two, she goes to there, schedules it on her output, right? Three, the band goes up, rings her doorbell, there's a friendly face from LADWP who has digital tools. Yeah.
Define the action. That's very hard.
Yeah, you need to skip those, like, here's the particular process, just set up the meeting, somebody's to show up, it's the sheet that I put.
But then are there others or yes, like, she does her part. Where does she put this? What other action might her friends there?
Overly.
Yeah.
That's her comment to the.
Yeah.
Well done.
You.
You.
Man.
You draw the band. You draw the band. Okay.
Yeah.
Experimental treatment and
Blend in.
using the new technology and the CR. And concern on that's right. Normally, retraining her. There you go. You know the words. Hello, doctor, you know it.
Overall, that's the part.
New girl.
And then, then
Great.
their training.
They may feel like it's not. What's it like? It's-
That is not anything which gold, again, your gold is better, sometimes over here, like, there's two gold lines in the process, there's connecting with Betsy, scheduling with Betsy, getting Betsy to pay. Those are very, there's a three specific, it's not just easy way to pay, it's an easy way to connect with the mobile, service provider. Schedule from the provider and Betsy pay. Safety goals. It's getting a little bit more sophisticated.
Oh, I was trying to.
Be more notice of the story there. Right?
And looking like that,
It
it looks
does
like
play,
the day that
Amanda's
you use
thing,
whatever
that's
government
exactly,
state
you know,
regulation.
narrative, building a narrative.
Like Crystal showed me.
Which is good, but then there are things drawings that, my single visual of Betsy. Saying.
What, where I feel like there's a disconnect is if she wants one-on-one, it'll be like to communicate a request. And
That's not what it's.
Oh, that's it's circular with a wheel inside. I'm pretty good at wheels. I know what it looks like.
I see that someone is.
The branding of the band, that should be a fascinating thing.
Yeah, for Henry. Or I like the test scores or maybe they don't like.
Keep the USPS.
To these cells.
Online. They're not so much, they're robotic, they're like. Saying like it's a new one fit.
I used to see that people and actually.
I miss the
Everybody
Jeep.
was going on.
Electric.
maybe it's not the ones they're doing. Actually, it's good
Betsy with a smile. Oh, you're Betsy.
How about are being fair?
With money.
Yeah, trainers, he was doing your very good, that part of it out.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's.
Okay.
It's saying to those, it's not fast, that's not, it's not like you're in here. Always talking to me, it's like, oh, they dart the wall, right? They have a dart, they have a target, and they're getting it consistent. Maybe me as a child, just the way I see it, yeah, it's the volume.
That only makes sense, but that's the trainer taking action. This is asking us, what's the user want? So that's where they don't connect to me. It's like, our solution is what the company's doing, but the question is, what's the user doing?
Well, but the user is successful in this scenario, I will just by the trainer.
So we're not saying what she did to accomplish it, we're just saying she met her goals because the environment was great.
Which is still a way to achieve that for.
Or this type of.
Yeah. I have to not be so literal. It's not that they take an action. They are in the environment.
The environment.
Allows it to
Rachel's allowed to thrive in her communication because she's given one-on-one interaction. Right. So close.
Materials because of seeing.
You're the team's resident jars.
That one is
You're
great.
the president, drawing out.
Everybody else would have, right, I'm not, or maybe other learners able to.
Yeah.
grasp
That's really
concepts.
good.
Those aluminum for everything.
Those especially with a big cigarette out.
Allows.
When we are on our head.
Q and A, it allows, especially this allows for more Q and A.
Or one-on-one dialogue. And they don't allow dialogue.
Differently.
Okay.
Okay, does this make sense? Okay, well, one of the other opportunities that you can also do is because you have a quick little drawing of the fan with Betsy or over here we have a hypnosis
Makes sense.
VR thing. That scenario, this exact scenario that you have here, you put back into artificial intelligence and you can ask it to render a world that's very similar to this. So, hey, whatever, Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever, Copilot, great. Copilot can make images?
Sure.
I think so. Hey, Copilot, help me generate
This is turns
a
out.
mobile van parked outside of a mid-century home.
Yeah.
But this is part where you're serious, you guys don't have a lot of context around the location, but add a location specific to Betsy in Los Angeles, mobile support van in Los Angeles, help that 92-year-old woman.
Cecilia told us now when she went to the soft class that it has to be a third grade level now.
Now, when you said that, I was like,
Big stuff.
no, they can read 4 and 5.
Help you
That's why I always say, let's calm it down. There's sentences.
She said no 4 syllables, I guess.
And you can see if you can render that more meaningfully
And I go,
with
let's call it.
generative AI.
Something to. What is the funnel thing?
So the phase of, so this is maybe more appropriate for other experiences, like what is the process?
Read, edit.
In that scenario, she might go, so she's at the beginning of training, the middle of training.
First day.
First day, okay, so that's, the phase is important for articulating the scenario. It is Rachel's first day of training. And she is in a small classroom environment with one-on-one training with an individual for a small topic based on their experience. That is a renderable
Okay, we have to create.
environment.
Actually, that's.
Okay, what?
Does that make sense? So it's like, and if your solution is associated both with the space and with the training, you can then ask or draw out what that environment might look like.
Here's a draw now.
Nature is at her first day and she wants to move on in a classroom with 2 teachers and 3 small topics.
So
Good.
people sitting down.
Okay, I'm done.
I think it's.
What a base.
Oh, and I need to train.
Yeah.
You're
I don't know how fast it'll render that.
Why do you accept it? I still can't do it.
Are you gonna do it in chat?
Oh, you do.
You're
sitting there, you're sitting there.
Right here.
Oh, I haven't gone.
I've never had it's like, now you're being siphoned by your organization.
I think that's what it's.
But that's fine.
So we don't want to.
So you made a little sketch.
Oh, he's in a.
Now, ChatGPT or whatever, like that, so then please render the clearly instead of a doctor shot. Is wearing the VR headset, sitting in a doctor's office, the tip is tiles by a anti-smoking.
Just send me the thing.
Anyone have a portable? A power bank?
I have one that's still.
I use three.
I do have these.
You can move this, so.
I need, that's gonna help. I need. And this too.
No idea.
No idea.
No idea, right to that.
What's up?
That's an accessibility.
Oh, it does. Does it, you just nobody cross the time.
Just stand there.
No.
Stand there and.
Oh, one of the other friends. Okay.
Just for 10 minutes, they say that, and then I'll take it off.
Where's it called? Let me see what wrong. Right?
Okay. And we'll get you. Good, that's safety, Damon's doing a good job.
Parallel, that's always like your competition. Like, oh, you must say that.
Thank you.
So render me a photo, picture of that table.
Oh, that. Did you guys see? What do I look?
Yeah, but we're gonna do this for a couple minutes. You get a the idea is that you're trying to render or at least textualize the space for what your user is building.
Oh, yeah.
It could just be the scenario. So the scenario is from two you have to choose, like Rachel is at a training on Monday. Less important on render they used to put Latin class, yeah. Small.
Training environment. It does say driving and.
They are training.
And yeah.
She's a successful training.
Man, like, it's like, it's. Ooh.
Filipino.
The sign on the fan, that was
Rock
like.
makes it.
Yeah.
It's not really mine too, though. Yeah, like some rock, someone color version.
Yeah, it's all in one, like, you know how there's.
Rock is just out of that.
And yeah, all this stuff.
Did you guys met? Have you guys met?
Oh, the explanation.
It's a why, yeah.
No. I don't know, is that coaster box? Coaster box? It's like a book upside down, weird, reading braille. Oh, it's not braille, it's not braille at all. It's not braille. It's not braille at all.
Yeah, he likes that whole conversation.
I'm gonna change Rachel's.
Okay, so again, you can take this, apply it to your outputs, right? It's just a narrative, the design, you get this scenario, again.
Here's doing.
The role of building out a unique scenario as opportunity to sort of say, contextualize it. Is this really what we're solving? This feels like accurate to what we're doing, and helps them say, okay, great. Let's talk about what it's equal to solve that problem. Now, prototyping off of this idea is the next sort of opportunity. Like, what are the things that we need to go into prototyping? How to solve this problem? And minutes may have like, oh, we need to schedule it, or it needs to be the van, or it needs to be technology that sort of shows up. It's a website that says we have a service, whatever that is that sort of aligns to it. Could be a way to do that, but prototyping ultimately is an experimental process of making things in the process of solving your scenarios, and it resembles or tries to resemble what the possible final solution could be. Right? We typically start very low test. Early prototypes are sometimes simulate design or functionality, and a lot of times, and what prototyping is fundamentally there for is to test if this environment which you set up is accurate to your end user and could be possible for solving the problem which you're going on. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, and part of the technology that's there, but what actually could be in that place. Now, prototyping as a core is somewhat of a cycle. Now, the role of the prototyping phase is we have ideas, we generate a scenario which we think about that idea could work, and then we can build out process steps or visualizations for how that idea could come to life or be rendered in the world more accurate. What makes prototypes quite useful is a prototype fundamentally makes the world tangible. It makes your idea into something that you've built or not. Now, prototypes are used in a variety of contexts, typically including semantics, design, electronics, or software prototyping. A prototype is designed to test and try out what a new design or a new position might be. Here's an example of a prototype of the original iPod. It's a fascinating thing. Do you have the original iPod? The sandy wheel.
Yeah, I have one.
Grind away. But the role of like, it's just a block, right? It could just be a piece of foam core or cardboard, sort of lines drawn on it that it's like, here's what the interface we sort of do. But ultimately, like from moving from that early idea of a handheld object, like we don't have phones like this without the original set of an iPod that's sort of line, and it can change the way it goes. Now, prototypes are quite useful because it allows us to think quick and fast and dirty. And paper prototypes generally allow us to sketch out the basic relationships of what the interface looks like, or the experience could be, or what the class environment looks like, or what the materials are for that, for Rachel and the trainer, et cetera, right? What Betsy sees when she sort of has to sign up for the outputs, or the flyer that she receives about the outputs at her senior center, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's lots of ways to prototype this outputs. And they can be alignable and generally are used for quickly assessing the problem and testing on internal feedback. We are designing through sketching. Sketches are technically not prototypes. They can't be used, but they're along the way. They're trying to get us there. And the opportunity for the ideation process to move from pieces of paper, ideas, or contexts at which we've aligned to how to actually solve that problem helps us then iterate or relate that over time. Any of you familiar with Jake Knapp or heard of Jake Knapp before? Jake Knapp is an author. He wrote a book called Sprint, which is an articulation of Google's Sprint methodology. It's a week-long sprint cycle that they run internally for design teams, which utilizes the design thinking process to some extent. It's also relied to software sprints. Maybe you actually work in software here. No, so there's a lot in the world of software engineering that utilizes the sprint sort of language. But we build prototypes mostly in digital spaces because that allows us to do that, and it sort of is a mindset. A prototype can be you can prototype anything. Prototypes are disposable, but they're meant to be built to learn just enough to move the idea forward or to get a feedback. So they shouldn't be too timely and expensive. The role of prototypes is that you use them early and often. You try and learn in your projects where errors exist is early. We can quickly sort of assess the value of an idea quickly. We can articulate like, oh, it wouldn't even investing in a van be worth it. What does a van cost? Okay, well, if we have to put $120,000 into a van and another 200 grand into training some of people up, is that even worth sort of doing for Betsy, who we're just trying to save $10? How many Betsy's are there? A lot in your cycle. Okay, so now you can look at the cost analysis of idea towards execution, right? And that can sort of align that. But you can make errors early in the process for why it's valuable versus late. Can cost more at the end to make changes. Similarly, if we look at the sort of timeline of an idea into production, prototyping can sometimes have a little bit higher cost at the beginning, but the ideation that sort of increases the cost. But over the long run of a project execution, prototypes drive down the cost of production because we've solved problems earlier through cheaper means, which result in less change, less expense, and ultimately higher success of products moving to the market. Now, this happens, there's lots of people talking about this kind of stuff, but prototyping at an organization can be there. And what the sort of high level value of prototyping is that you want to learn fast and fail. Many of ideas may not work, but if they don't work on paper after 3 hours, it's a hell of a lot better than after 8 months of working on it, a lot of people's investment time and outputs, and when you roll it out and Patsy doesn't use it ever. Like, great, we can spend a bunch of money and just never actually solve the underlying problem. Would have been nice to sort of solve that with lower techniques. Does that make sense? Now, failing is hard, but failing inside of small environments, time box outputs, small teams as an outputs is where prototyping generally has the most value, and we'll practice this a little bit today. I know we only have like the last 30 minutes, so this is going to be a little bit fast. But what I want your team to do is get out another sheet of paper. I want you to break it into fours. Or you can each take your own sheet. It's not up to you. I realize it. Browsing around this weekend was fine. You own that works as well. But what I want you to do is each of you are going to draw out a solution. A few set of screens, like what does the process look like for Shirley? Or how does box or supposed to box get from get to the mobile LADWP van? Does that make sense? Each of you individually are going to write up, you can have a series of flows. These are typically sketches, high-level outputs, maybe a set of steps. If one of your team wants to manage a step in your flow, like the scheduling, and another one wants to do the supporting Betsy when the van shows up at your house, it's up to you. Each of you can pick up the aspect. We're just going to draw out a quick solution. So what that might look like from Rachel's perspective, it's an individualized invite to a small group session with her and her trainers. Her trainers are given bios in her invite. So their specialty and they support her. That is specifically articulated. An invite or the training. It could have the trainers see a bio of Rachel and what frustrates her or what would be solving you have your scenario. Now we're just articulating what that scenario is. In an individual scenario, yeah, exactly. Frustrated by the I'll do the whole band coming to hot. Or I'm at the in your center. I want this phone. Does this make sense? They're just each all solving the problem.
Different solutions.
You have your idea, right? The scenario is surely at a doctor's office, right? Using the hypnosis device, right? How does that work?
That's
Steps of hypnosis. Don't let AI do your ideation. Sure.
Okay.
So what is that? She goes to the doctor's office. How does she get found out her well?
In a car.
Schedule.
Okay.
Does she schedule on her phone?
You call it the appointment.
Appointment, she calls an appointment.
Then the doctor recommends.
Get new technology. Individual steps, you may each do it slightly different. You may each design it slightly different, but there's a sort of output of how sure, like what is diagnosis?
Okay.
How does she understand the value? Yeah. Yeah, great. Your appointment, she got it. Step number 2, Betsy gets an appointment. Drawing number 3, the van shows up at Betsy's house. So you gotta draw the van again.
Yes.
So what?
Draw an ice cream truck. Oh, yeah, that's okay. It's radio. Sorry. You just want. Oh, yeah. Like here.
We're on it, thank you. You can save it for next time.
For another. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna do this for very long, obviously. The prototyping phase is a lot longer, but just a couple of ideas of what Betsy or Shirley is going to see in her solution. You could do, you each could take it from part of the process, this team over here, one took the interface at the senior center, another took the interface of scheduling, another took the bus showing up. I don't know what the speaker is doing, yeah, like it. Give me on the phone. Oh, she's on the phone, perfect, yes. I see what you're doing. Yeah, okay. You got a hand drawing of, I kind of invested in your the here first. Yeah. Keep going. Good. Yeah, and the public library, signing up to get some support.
I really don't know what.
They're gonna give them that to the CDO place, and then they're gonna get this new technology that's out there. Which one they're output is great. This guy's got a. I see.
Me neither. I'm not good there. I've never been there.
So wait, what part are you asking her?
No, we got to do our.
Your own version of what?
No, it's them.
Right, that's your own version of the, well, I'm not hearing.
Oh, that's like.
So like, like when you walked out.
That one.
This right, yeah. So this is the vision or the image.
Supported by the community.
About it. And-
Yeah. Okay, radio app. Step 2, gets access. Step 3, goes to the location. The public library, that's step 3. Okay, quick. This is each of you individually. When you want to draw out the solution, then that's the. You're good.
Bye, Mrs. Lady.
Who's this lady? Who is this lady? Who's that lady?
Oh, I see brothers. Oh, man. Oh, it's not, we're the Isley Brothers. That's on. Oh.
I did. Never had success. Oh, ours was more, we tried to do an activation of the van, and was, nobody wanted to go inside it.
As our neighborhood, this is very.
And then, does it return back to her schedule again? So, what is that? Here.
For painful.
You sure you didn't
Same.
want to explain, you just wanted to drop it.
I'll set up a return. So have her happy and then I'll be back in 2 months.
He just went from.
It's more like that additive.
We're going to the field park.
Okay, and then she
Has another appointment
Does she have another?
for the van to return. Thanks, Bill.
Also, case there.
yeah, but then you want her to keep using it.
And then you want her to return to her schedule is the next. Equip, that means repeating the life cycle, right? So there you go.
There in the van.
So-
But if she ever has any issues, she would come here and start you.
Right. So then if here is, she pays, and then has the option which to have the van come back there every month, which is. Or 2 months, okay, that actually is business, a business associate. It pays 2 months, if, for the van to show up, she has to pay 2 months. For the van not to come back in 2 months.
Or just have the bank come back, she's only coming back probably.
That's my point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Again.
So now you have this like, what is the service the van is? They can pay the first time and they can get help set up.
Draw that portion.
I'm not right. Watch him.
So, is that, this is where I'm, is what, like, this is the, this is the, sign up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, then you can purchase this.
That's what I was thinking. See, now you guys go straight.
How does the noise go?
Wait, I have lights on my.
Help that see.
I'm gonna do that with words, I think.
Picture the inside.
As an interface. This is what
See,
we're.
mine's here on the.
Here's her bill, here's how she pays, here's how we guarantee that she's signed up on auto pay. Right, we help her connect it to her, there's a whole service cycle there, it's like.
Bags at all.
Yeah, to guarantee that it sort of works. Yeah, so there you go.
There we go.
Here's your bill, here's the page, Betsy has to sign. Happy, correct, and maybe it's like, I don't know. But that,
I count her hair.
that service interface, that Betsy has to do. That you show Betsy's house, and she feels like someone just needed work. It's like, why don't they show up here? I get it. Rather than I use the internet. That's the problem.
It's crazy.
I know that's for this.
I didn't mention that. Yeah, exactly.
You can answer me.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Yeah.
Fine on the bus.
Oh, very, yeah.
Nice.
I start taking the book. Oh, and then it goes to the training facility, and then they get a model. Okay, good.
No, I can't draw that.
We're done. Yeah, good. Take pictures, they're fine. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with your stick figure. It sets the context. Yeah, and then here, then you might ask the question, what is this? So that, what we would ultimately prototype, what is that thing like? The specific steps of that narrowed training environment. I think it would have, that makes sense, like, no more room, it could be, this is only for 20 minutes. Here's our agenda, all these things that are just like, ultimately you could visualize in a prototype. Because what you're hypothesizing is that this short training environment is helpful for
Special.
bingo. Does that make sense?
She's giving her special training.
Yep, specialized training, yes. And what that specialized training is, again, very generic, but that's where you can start getting specific. What specialized training is it? It's service support. Here's how you answer phone. Resource of training.
I'm like, it just to start. I'm like, service support, I'm like, that's.
Or whatever, you get my point.
Yeah, I really
That's fine.
open yourself.
Okay, so take a look at your ideas. The last quick thing that we're gonna do before we wrap up, obviously this stuff is these are early ideas. Ultimately, early ideas can be extensible, or at least said, okay, great, now I want to know what this looks like. What does the medical treatment page look like? That gives surely value or trust in that. There's a million ways to sort of articulate that. It could be buildable out. What does inside your goggles actually look like when you're being hypnotized? Another thing that could be prototyped. What does the service band's interface when she's working with Betsy look like to help Betsy have trust in paperless billing, et cetera, et cetera? What does your training look like? All these are environments or setups that could help us build out a sequence that could be extensible and then ultimately testable. Some of these are, is that environment effective? Do we have a classroom like this that could work? Will people go to the public library to see these elements? That's a hypothesis, right? At some level. Now, the role of user testing is that it gives us a sort of opportunity at the end to sort of validate whether our stuff is working or not. And the role of testing in prototyping is a prototype is built to test. If you make a prototype and you don't test it, you're not prototyping. You're just imagining it's an opportunity. There's a lot of people like, oh yeah, we just released our prototype to our audience. Like, what? No, it's gonna fail. You gotta learn from this thing. There's no way you did it right the first time. The role of prototyping is sometimes to sort of get to an early idea, what this could be. Sometimes those things are called MVPs. Test it, iterate it, and continue to design. Now, the role of designing ultimately is that you start on the iterative cycle. Take a prototype and you test that prototype, see if it works. If it doesn't work, okay, great. We can make some tweaks, we can extend that. That can go into a mid-level prototype where we can digitize more things, we can put it into the world. We can set up a rudimentary van at the senior center to see if anyone can engage in outputs. Oh, we're seeing high traffic of older people that really thought the van was cool. Okay, let's extend this to a larger area. You wouldn't roll it out to all of Los Angeles because that would be one, expensive and risky, right? So you align that to a higher fidelity prototype. The more prototypes you build, the faster you can do this, the more it aligns to that. And one of the things that can be helpful at the end is what is your prototype trying to solve, right? I think we want to understand if Betsy would even be interested in signing up for a service of a mobile van in the first place, right? And we want to know what is accessible about. So the role of that is just sort of a hypothesis. What would this Kaiser appointment time? It's so long. It's so long.
I know.
Long fingering your phone. the role of design thinking generally is also this idea of I'm setting up my prototype through the lens of a hypothesis. If I don't know what I'm trying to validate with my hypothesis, with my product or prototype in the first place, very hard to put it in the world and see if it works or not. So this is where we can write out just this idea. As a design thinker, I want to understand X about X, and just write that sentence below your drawing. As a design thinker, I want to understand if an effective scheduling outputs with my doctor for hypnosis is actually achievable and doesn't create ruptures. There's your test. And you can build an interface that helps someone schedule a hypnosis event in relative terms. Actually, that is enough information to plug into a Matrix or AI and say, we had scheduled that. The ultimate of, and ultimately prototyping is based on this quick idea of, well, what is this? I mean, what is this thing? What is that thing? Does that make sense? Any questions? Just right, your last move at the end. I, as a design thinker, I want to understand what about what. I want to understand if Betsy would actually be successful at using mobile sourcing. Maybe look at this and go, huh. That seems useful, but how many places does the mobile van visit today? How long will that support days? I can ask one question, but I can ask it later before you actually spend the money on fans, train up the outputs, build an interface for supporting that mobile clean. Okay.
Maybe to your point, it's initially it's capital, but then the longevity of the program, like it's full on auto pay, and then we don't have overdue bills. We don't have to send collectors out, risk their lives.
So,
ability.
yeah, and think about
What's
this.
the goal with the overhead?
Your initial KPI of trying to reduce bills actually extends to a larger ethos. You now have mobile advertising that can, or the support, the LADWP. It's literally a driving marketing component. You made the van really cool, and people understood that LADWP was there to support you versus the website or whatever.
And then there's the horn.
Yeah, the horn can be grabbed. You can have an LADWP horn, it sounds like whoosh. Swim water. Yeah, it sprays you. When it gets hot outside, the LADWP sprays the kids. So you know what that idea is. That's a lawsuit? See, but my bad idea can be translated into a good idea. Maybe you give away water guns to the kids. Come up to the van.
We give up free water cups.
Water cups. There it is. And then they can drink. Fluoride full stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Now the role of your hypothesis, how your idea sort of comes together or starting to be articulated, is then extensible because you can then drive that idea through to execution. A sketch is not an output, it's not a prototype, but it's an early step into saying, well, what would we need to do first? Well, maybe the first thing we need to do is actually get it schedulable. So we can design out an interface that has the steps of scheduling the van to show up in your house. That thing doesn't work, you can't schedule that, can't schedule Betsy, how do we schedule for it, et cetera. Does that make sense? Yeah. that'll be good luck.
The VR product? Or the scheduling product?
Well, yeah, you can have a hypothesis, well, that depends, right? Right, so as a design thinker, you may want to know if the schedule, if scheduling something like this is successful, that's one set of outputs. Scheduling leads to using that thing. The hypothesis might be, is someone more likely to utilize a what's this VR?
Yeah.
In VR.
It'll, the schedule.
Yeah, but this is doing right. That might be helpful. We make the scheduling event easy. more people might show up for doctors, share about VR things. And so there are some VR companies are like, oh, can we put some of that government money? There's lots of grants. You're gonna try and, but it is, you're smoking right now for a generation, doesn't matter.
Scheduling, it may using our AI, VR.
Central Standard.
Yeah. That's exactly what you want. Or accessible representation. Parameters all have to do that.
Set up, I call them this part, schedule, we're just give up, or they may call me. So you have to remember your.
Hypnosis can, now that habit would be storming. Okay.
Yeah.
Just all. This making sense? Everybody clear?
Understanding unique learning, more people do challenge that Rachel has.
Yeah.
Yep, great. Okay. All of these early ideas, they could be prototypable over time, or you could evaluate them together, or if you were on a team to say, well, which idea maybe wins, or should we move forward with? There isn't necessarily one solution. What's great about prototyping generally is each of these sort of premises can be broken up into individual parts, or say, hey, let's try that one, and let's try this one, and we move them together. Because they're prototypes early, those are then racing each other. But the value of ideation and generally of design thinking is that we can collaborate on stuff, we can combine ideas together, we can sort of be on the same page about what is being testable, and ultimately, design thinking helps us improve our human-centered design collaboration, thinking about generating ideas, producing stuff. High-quality collaboration helps in evaluating the viability, the desirability, and the feasibility of any one of these problems or ideas. And we can show how it cares about our end user, why it aligns to our organization, and how technology or AI systems or whatever helps our storytelling. The next thing that it does is ideation helps us lean into making. We can make a lot more, have a bunch of little ideas that we can sort of move forward. It's not one idea wins them all, but it's an opportunity to do that. And then we can also ensure that we tell a better story. And ultimately, it helps us tell better scenarios. If we can convince the scenario of Betsy not willing to leave her house, and not willing to use her internet, and unwilling to change her billing cycle, we can then say, well, what's the last, sometimes they call this the last mile challenge, or how do we sort of reach out, change the environment to create trust, to build outputs, and sometimes that feedback can be an echo chamber or aligned to that, and we can visualize the world in a way that makes everyone else say, yeah, that is an interesting premise. I think we should pursue that. That's worth moving into the next phase, or that's worthy of another iteration of the idea, or that's how we can extend it and build it out. And ultimately, it's part of practice. 3 hours in an ideation session is not going to revolutionize an organization. It's not going to change and build on things tomorrow. But you could say, hey, what if? Organizations that can get people to sit in rooms and think about what if, and then learn how to produce those things into actual products and services, ultimately are more fun to work at, things you're going to design and build, and it reinforces. So as you learn these skills, as you practice them, as you bring them into your organization, that's the sort of value how it's changed. Any questions? No? Thank you. So, yeah, you guys did all the work. It's just yelled at you for Good. Do you have any questions? There, I'll put up my outputs. I'll share the recording and stuff with Chris for both sessions, and reach out to me on the LinkedIn's, etc., and we'll be done.
You're welcome.